Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Captive Audience. You can see we got the YMCA dance working here. My cat was in the room a minute ago, and my cat was doing it. The dogs are doing it because their lives have been saved as well. This is about having men and women and saving cats and dogs.
Yes, it is. Welcome to our captive audience special edition of the inauguration of our wonderful president. We are all winning bigly. I'm Sunny Danforth with my buddy, Don Anderson, and we're so happy to be here. We've got huge smiles. We're having so much fun because of our awesome president and vice president. We've got class back in the White House, Don.
Oh my goodness, it feels so good to hear folks who will speak full-throated, unapologetic American exceptionalism, and that's what you picked up in that conversation, in rather the talk that President Trump delivered this evening. I was telling Sonny earlier, I have not felt that good about a presidential talk since Ronald Reagan asked Gorbachev to tear down this wall. That was sensational, and it felt like it was in the great tradition of the American speakers who've been great speakers and great leaders who come along at just the right time. And we have a history of every time there's a moment, the right person steps forward. I'm thinking of JFK and his great speech, Martin Luther King's great speech, "I Have a Dream." Who can forget about the Gettysburg Address and of the people, for the people, and by the people, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and the Declaration of Independence. You go down the list. Every time there's been a moment in time where we had to have it, the right person came along and delivered. And we're having another moment in history like that. And I'm just so thankful that I'm here to see this one, Sonny.
I'll tell you, we had here in Umatilla County, we had an election watch party, or not election watch party. Well, we had one of those too, but an inauguration day party, and we had a breakfast potluck. And I'll tell you, so I got there about 8 o'clock in the morning and started setting things up, put C-SPAN on our television, and that's what we were watching. And I'll tell you, we had our former Senator Hansel stopped in. We had city council men stop in. We had a nice, wonderful group of people. And I'll tell you, it's and listening to the comments of everybody there, you hear, oh, I feel like I can breathe. The weight is off my shoulders. It's a wonderful day for America. And you know what is exceptionally good is how many Democrats have been their eyes opened, that have come to the aid of America. That's what they've done. We talk about the billionaires and the tech people have come to the aid of America. Realize, I mean, that's what turned Elon Musk around, going, hello, we got a republic to save here. And it's just so dang refreshing to, see everything today and to hear the speeches and the executive orders. Oh my goodness. But you mentioned the invocation.
Yes, I can't remember the name of the pastor who gave the invocation. That was one of the most amazing things I've heard. I didn't get watch the whole thing in total, so I had to see bits and pieces. But I was driving down the road on the radio. I heard the pastor's invocation, and the way he ended that. If you don't mind, I'll just read it for you. For those of you, it was the ending of Martin Luther King's famous speech on the Mall. And every now and then, this is something you just have to read once in a while for inspiration, as with many of the great speakers that this country have produced at just the right time. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the Cretaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain, Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, we will allow freedom to ring. We'll let it ring from every village, every hamlet, every state, and every city. We'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, we will join hands and sing in the words of that old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Now, if that doesn't move you, Nothing will. And he delivered it with such passion. And after I saw it, I got home and I just started pulling up the great speeches. I was telling Sonny earlier, I pulled up Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. I pulled up John F. Kennedy's inaugural speech. Um, Ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your
Yes.
country. And I started pulling up the speeches, thinking to myself, how incredible! What other country has a legacy? And we only been around 250 years.
Yeah.
It's like insane. What a great country this is. And just watching that talk and seeing the energy in that room and realizing how close to the precipice we were, and that by the grace of God, and definitely by the grace of God, we were able to come back from this. I'm just stunned. I'm just stunned.
And he said that today. He in his speech, he says, I was spared by God to do this, and I believe that. It's Don and I were talking before we came on live that you know we both feel it's a blessing that 2020 went the way it was, so we could have 2024, and people could see just how bad it would get. And I'm reading some of the comments here. Like Marjorie says, I love the way he talked to the press while he's signing the executive orders. Oh yeah, hello, Biden can't walk and talk, and chew gum. And here's Trump signing away, answering questions, stopping his signature mid stroke. Oh my heavens, it's
Yeah,
fabulous, fabulous.
and to Sonny's point, yeah, I don't think that that it's like that old cell phone commercial. Can you hear me now? I don't think that the American people could
Yeah,
hear because they just didn't realize how
yeah,
bad it was. The deep state was kind of an undercover thing, and the Democrat Party has been doing stuff for a long, long time. They've been hiding it, and they were slick about it. But Trump came along and just completely gaslit them into just taking the covers off and showing us exactly who they were. And I think we all were completely shocked to learn what these people were and who they were and what they were willing to do. I mean, you step back and realize they literally tried to kill us. When I think back and think of things in my life, I think back about the restaurants that are no longer in business, the people who lost their businesses because they shut them down during
yeah,
COVID, the fact that they forced us to walk around wearing pieces of plastic over our mouth, the fact that they forced people to get shots that didn't want to get shots, and caused people to lose their jobs because they didn't want to get these shots that were untested and unproven. You just go down the list of destruction. Think about the kids who missed, years and days in school. Little kids getting chopped up because because the teachers behind the parents' back gaslit them into thinking they were gender that they weren't. I mean, it is. I don't even know where to stop.
and
They,
and
they showed us who they were.
talking about the jabs a little bit, there's a fellow that I follow on social media, and thank God every day he posts a post, and his life was utterly changed because he was forced to take the shot for his employer. He was an airline pilot,
Mhm.
and he went through. His life is altered forever because of what happened in his brain and his body. And it is that's you can go, okay, I can go get another job, I can quit my job and go get another job, but those that unknowingly have been affected that way, well, yeah, it was his decision to get the job, but you know what, you got to provide for or to get the shot, but the jab, but you've got to provide for your family. The atrocities that have been done, not just to Americans but to the world, I believe
Oh,
there will be
the
hell to pay
suppression.
for that.
Yeah, I believe that now that the press is feeling
Yeah.
free, the suppression, or at least the non-mainstream press, and people are going to start hearing this stuff. It is going to be unbelievable. I mean, the data is there. I mean, the insurance companies are reporting that illness amongst the working age people between that age of what 21 and like 64, that critical mass of people that run the economy, days of illness, days of sickness, all of that is historically high by magnitudes, not by a little bit, by magnitudes, and all started um, with the implementation of the shot. There's nothing else that describes it. Cancer rates
Yeah.
through the roof relative to where they were. People having cardiovascular disease in age groups that don't have those issues through the roof. Um, you can go to this website, Die Suddenly, and
Yes,
you'd be
yes,
shocked.
yes.
Like, it's just dropping on the soccer field, dropping on the football field. dropping playing
So
baseball. It's incredible.
let's go off of that. I know that's important. I'm going to change that. Like Lori says, who didn't love the frozen left during Trump's speech? So yeah, while he's speaking, you know, I'll tell you, Clinton was back there. He was enjoying the show, quite frankly. The others were stone cold, not happy campers. Biden looked like he was nodding off for a little bit, and
Uh-huh.
it was just something to see. I'm over the moon.
Mhm.
Clearly, I'm got my Trump shirt on, but over the moon that we've got a president that actually and an administration. It's not just our
Mhm.
president, but the people that he is putting, excuse me, in his administration. Which, by the way, we
Mhm.
have a Secretary of State now has been confirmed.
Oh,
Marco
all
Rubio is
right. All right.
confirmed today.
That's and he's
Unanimous.
doing everything he's. When was the last time we had a president go into office and do exactly what he said he was
Yeah.
going to do? I mean, I love that. Right off the bat, we're going to what, drill, baby, drill. I was like, you know, I thought that one of the worst things ever was when Biden got elected. The first thing he did was he shut down that pipeline. That was insane. But to see him open up Anwar up in Alaska, offshore drilling off the coast of California, uh, drilling everywhere. This country has. This is like probably the only country in the world that can completely dependent on its own resources. Doesn't need any of the country for anything. And it's our own silly leftist laws that keep us from exploiting our own industries. So this is just fantastic.
Well, it is. And so let's see. He's declared we've got two genders. He's a signing guy. He's secured our border, made the one of the fact the very first one was to declare a national emergency at our border. And so that enacts things that I don't even know, but they cannot come across any longer. It halts all of that, and he's gone on a wonderful signing of the executive orders, and it's awesome. He's
Didn't he declare? Didn't he declare the cartels terrorist groups? Wasn't that one of them?
Yes, yeah. Well, that is, I don't
Yeah.
know that he has signed that one yet. He's done
Hmm.
the national emergency at the border and that will allow the Defense Department to deploy active duty and National Guard military to the southern border, erect barriers, and work on ways to take down enemy drones. He's clarifying the military's role to protecting the territorial integrity of the United States, and the executive order will direct the military to prioritize borders and territorial integrity. So that right there makes us a sovereign nation. You're not just coming
Yeah.
across. Um,
Mhm.
they've ended catch and release for illegal immigrants, restarting Remain in Mexico. Yes, and also designating criminal cartels and others as specifically designated global terrorists. Suspending
Yeah,
the
that's and
refugee
the thing is,
resettlements for at least 4 months.
mhm.
One,
And the reality is, this stuff's good for Mexico. I mean, if Mexico didn't have us as a release valve, they would stay and fix their own country.
yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%. And some of the countries, like El Salvador, says, "Oh, just send everybody from our country back here. We'll take care of them," because their guy's gonna. They were holding trials for 500 at a time in El Salvador. It's one of the safe. It used to be one of the most dangerous countries in the Central American hemisphere, and
Yeah,
now it's really safe. They've got a great president. They have
amazing.
an El Salvador president for America, like an America First president there down there.
Right. Mhm. Yeah, and that's great to see. I've read stories, but I can't think of his name. But that's just awesome what he's done there. I mean, turned it around overnight. But he did what he had to
Yes.
do. You lock up criminals, and amazing. You know what? Crime goes down when you lock up criminals. Imagine that.
Well, it does.
Memo to Los Angeles, memo to California.
So, one of the orders is to the immediate removal process without the possibility of asylum for migrants who cross the border and don't meet the criteria to claim asylum, ending birthright citizenship.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, send them all back. An order
No other country
enhancing
in
the
the world does
vetting and screening of illegal immigrants. One of the orders he signed tonight did away with 78 of Biden's executive orders.
that. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Let's see on the economy. Let's see. He did another one, restoring the death penalty for public safety, enhancing the vetting and screening of illegal immigrants, and in order to protect the public against invasion, which is meant to give agencies the authority to deport illegal immigrants and establish Department of Homeland Security task forces to coordinate the removal of gangs and criminals. Um,
Mhm.
he has done so much, and then right just 12 minutes ago, he pardoned 1,500 J6 defendants.
That is one of the most important things he could have done.
Yeah.
Um, just, it's just unbelievable how these people were treated. And you look at that, that's the sort of thing that happened in East Germany. And our own government was doing that. The weaponization of the judicial system. I'm so glad to see he's going to reverse that.
Yes, and I'm reading Lori. He did sign one that said the flags will be at full staff at all future inaugurations. There are so many things, but some of he's signed, he's pulled us out of the WHO. He's pulled us out of the
Hmm.
Paris Accords. No more windmills. He goes, we're done. No more windmills. I'll tell you, I
Right.
would hope
Oh
that
yeah.
he would say that on solar panels eating up our farm ground, because
Yeah.
that's a bad deal. Solar panels on point of use is a good thing, but eating up our farm ground, especially here in Oregon. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sure he'll get
drug
around to it.
cartels are now terrorists. There
Hmm.
is. It's.
That
I'm
is
not
great.
tired of winning. We're winning bigly.
Yeah, you think is there any way to tally the number of lives the
Oh,
Democrat Party has literally destroyed? I mean, whether you're talking about illegal aliens, killing and raping young women, whether you're talking about the fentanyl crossing the border, and people getting addicted to that and being killed by that, eliminating police and being anti-police and causing crime to go through the roof, reducing the punishment for crime. What is it? In some states where it's a $900 is, we won't even prosecute you, is considered a misdemeanor. I mean, the list is endless, and the number of lives lost because of it, I don't even know how you begin to add it up.
You're right. I'll tell you, there's so many people that and he talked about this for quite a bit. Um,
Hmm.
that how this has destroyed people's lives. The
Hmm.
J6, it's and other things that Biden, the Justice Department, and Biden's administration has done to citizens of the United States, because they wanted the heavy hand of the law, which he signed in an executive order that will never happen. Now, many of his executive orders, quite frankly, need to be uh, made into law. Many need to be done by Congress and the Senate and made into law so that it cannot be undone by the next president. Um, love this External Revenue Service, so
Yes,
there's,
I love that. That's awesome.
it is to make sure that
That
the
is,
tariffs are being paid and that we're being paid by
mhm,
other countries what is owed us. And
yeah. I'm really looking forward to what he has eventually to say about NATO and that sort of thing as well. These other countries not paying their fair share for their own defense. That's going to. I'm sure that will be addressed eventually as well.
yes, I like Lori saying DEI is done. Common sense. We've got two genders. We don't have
Mhm.
more, we have two. We've always had two.
Mhm.
There are so many things, and it's because, though, but this is where you go back to 2020. Had COVID not happened, had the 2020 election not been stolen, we would not necessarily be here right now.
We would not have known how horrendous these people were. They would have kept operating undercover. Um, they'd have kept doing the things they were doing to our kids in the classroom, for example. And most people who weren't engaged would never have known. And if you told them, they never would have believed it. I mean, they had to literally see it with their own eyes, as is the case with most people who are less engaged. And the more and I've always thought this, about 20 to 25% of the population is engaged, thinks, looks at things, and noodles through, you know, A happened, B and C happened, therefore A, B, and C are all connected, right? But the rest of the population doesn't really do that. I think fully a third of the population has to be hit in the face. I mean, you might hear about illegal immigration, and that's really terrible down there in Texas. But until it's like your doorstep, you're not going to change. And we saw that's exactly what happened. It was brilliant for Abbott. I think it was Abbott that sent those illegals to New
Oh,
York or
yes.
Chicago. Um, it, and then it meant something. But if it's 2,000 miles away, that's somebody else's problem.
Yes, and I
you
think
know,
Florida
and
was
that,
doing that as well. And that was the thing. Why
mhm,
should the border states be the only ones that have to deal with this? Sending them to Martha's
well,
Vineyard that they were shipped right out, that opened the eyes of a
immediately got
lot of
rid
people.
of it. Yes, yes, it did. And I tell you, this Los Angeles
Oh,
inferno
yeah.
is going to do the same thing because those people, particularly people who live in places like the Palisades, about as blue as you can possibly get, they were never going to feel the impact of their policies. Their policies that allow homeless people to run the streets, they weren't running the streets in their neighborhood. Uh, their policies that drove the price of food through of everything else through the roof, they can afford it. No big deal for them, right? So this is one time when the chickens, in the words of Malcolm X, came home to roost.
It
You
is.
know,
And many of the people that were affected by the fires, this is what they voted for. This is
yeah.
what they voted for. And
But they could not connect the
no.
dots until it hit them straight in the face. Um, it just had to hit them in the face, otherwise they weren't going to see it.
So another executive order is the regulatory freeze to prevent bureaucrats from issuing any more regulations until the administration has full control of the government.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
There's a federal hiring freeze, except for the military and other exempted categories, until the administration has full control of the government and the government's
Yeah,
objectives are understood. I love it.
that's
A
great.
another one was a requirement for all federal employees to return to full-time in-person work immediately. That means tomorrow.
That's going to be huge
Yes, it is.
because a lot of people they're not used
No,
to that.
no, they're not. And
They're not used to working either.
there a directive. I love this one. A directive for every federal government department and agency to address the cost of living crisis
Mm,
because
yeah.
it's in everything.
Oh, yeah. I saw something, and I don't know if I get this right, but generally it's true, but the numbers may not be exact. When Trump was in office, it took us to buy a house, took a salary or took earnings of around $75,000. This is across the country. Now it's like $130,000. So if you're a young person, how many young people are going to be making 130,000 bucks? It's going to take you a while for the average person to get
Oh,
to
yeah.
130. Um, it would look completely hopeless to a 18-year-old, 22-year-old, right? So why buy? There's no wonder so many people are just checked out of the workforce because it looks hopeless. Maybe that's not such an irrational thing when you think about it. Now, I would never tell anybody to just quit and give up. But on the other hand, it's not completely irrational. A house around here probably costs what? I mean, just around here, it's like 400
Mhm.
grand. Which you think about the down payment would be on that. It's insane.
Right.
But that's what this administration's done to us. Um, and you go get a tank of gas, and that's like you might as well take a mortgage in your house to get a tank of gas. you know, Food's up 30%. Everything's up.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is, and some of it is artificially inflated, like property,
Mhm.
because BlackRock has bought a lot
Hmm.
of property all over the United States, buying houses all
Sure.
over the
Hmm.
United States as part of their investment
Hmm.
program. And, so when you control the housing market and renting, I remember Obama. Now, I have rentals, my husband and I do, but I remember
Hmm.
Obama. We were still sailing on our sailboat, and he said, it's going to be a renter's market for the next 30 years. And I went,
Hmm.
oh, we got to buy more apartments. That's what I went, oh, okay. I'm listening to you because, and he was right. Because one of
Hmm.
the things that under Obama, because of Obamacare, part of Obamacare, it used to be that an employer, you had to work, if an employee worked 40 hours a work week, the employer
Hmm.
provided insurance. They lessened
Hmm.
that to, what is it, 34 hours, I think. 34
Hmm.
hours. Correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody knows. So then employers went, oh, well, you're just part time. And it made some, and 40 hours is considered a full time job. And if they're part time
Right.
employees, then they don't have to give them health and medical insurance. This was to bring on
Right.
the Obamacare. And when they did
Hmm.
that, I went, oh no, now people had to have two jobs, you
Hmm.
know?
Oh yeah, it's pretty slick.
Yes.
And don't think these people haven't thought it through. I mean, I'll tell you another one, and I noticed this around here, is this high density
Oh,
living thing there,
yes.
the scam they're pulling. I'm not quite sure what the economics are around it, but when you don't see single family housing going in anymore, what you see are these developments with a zillion apartments, or houses that are like 6 inches from each other, right? And I think it goes back to the old 15-minute city
Yes.
thing. You definitely see that in Portland, and it's spilling across the river into Vancouver as well. So that's another thing to watch for these folks. Trying to, this is what communists do, to try to trap you in areas so they can control you.
Yeah, they do. And single family residents, when you live in a neighborhood, I grew up in a neighborhood like that, and there weren't any apartments. Um, but apartments brought into that, it changes the dynamics of the single family neighborhood. This is why, like, you can go to Santa Monica, where all
Hmm.
of this used to be single family residences, and then they put in 3-story condos. One's the first floor is parking and the other two are up on this narrow streets. The infrastructure's not there, and it changes the whole dynamic of the neighborhood. Now, yes, we have apartments, but they're not necessarily in single family neighborhood areas. They're in higher density, and also, it's a type of, if you're a slumlord, those types of things affect the neighborhoods absolutely. But
Well,
Obama
yes,
made
yeah.
is really what drove that. Then the investment companies like BlackRock, that's the only one I can think of
Hmm.
off the top of my head.
There's a bunch of
There's a
them.
litany of
Right.
them that are doing that, which is
Hmm.
actually artificially increasing the cost of single family residences and raising rents.
And see, the other side of this is the social. This is the social engineering component. Is they'll make a certain percentage of that will be Section 8 or something of that nature, and the builders can't get the contract unless they have set aside a certain percentage of that for Section 8. So now you talk about the dynamic of how that impacts a single family neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this when I lived in Long Beach. So what happens is, just step back and think about this. When you go to buy a home, one of the first things that people look at is the quality of the school, right, and the quality of
Yep.
the neighborhood. And you bust your butt. Part of the reason no one articulates it this way, but I have thought about it, is they buy a house in a certain neighborhood because they want to be able to live around people who think like them, and people who are well behaved, and people who are going to hold similar values. I mean, that's what you do. That's why you bust your hiney to set aside the money to be able to do that. And what the government does is it comes along and rewards people who haven't made that effort and penalizes the people who have by moving in people who don't hold the same value systems. So now suddenly your kid is going to school. with kids who come from a family background doesn't have those same value systems, and you know what's going to happen. The value systems you hold aren't going to rub off on them. Their value systems are going to rub off on your kids, and that's how you take a whole neighborhood down, and that's what liberals do. That's what
Yeah,
happens.
that is what happens. And so, but Trump is a smart guy, and he's also brought in some builders. I don't remember the guy's name. I just remember him saying, "Oh yeah, if you don't know him, he's like one of the largest builders in America." And I don't know what he builds. I don't know if he does. I think it was in commercial, but I'm not sure.
Hmm.
And so he's bringing in people that we don't necessarily know, but it's the brightest of the brightest. And I
Hmm.
feel like some of them are his friends that are going, you know what? I want to help change and fix America too. It's
You know what?
country
Yeah.
over
Well,
self.
what I love about this is they're very bright people, but they're bright people who have real world
Yes.
experience. So you think back to the Kennedy administration back in the '60s. He brought in the brightest of the bright, and they were to Harvard, Yale, and all. And I can't think of their names right now, right? But there were people who hadn't had. They lived in the ivory
Hmm.
tower, and they were the same guys who got us into Vietnam because they lived in this ivory
Yeah.
tower, and their ideas hadn't been tested uh, against human frailty, if you will. The beautiful thing about these guys is they've been in business, so they've had to turn a dollar. And if you're going to turn a dollar, you're going to learn what human beings are really like and how they really behave and how incentives work. And and that is the beautiful thing about this cadre of people. They're people who've been out
Yes.
there, and so the people like that's one of the reasons why Trump is so comfortable in all of these different settings. When was the last time we had a president who could be in a truck and look comfortable, who could go in a black barbershop and look
Yeah.
comfortable,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he could be comfortable and be with people like Elon Musk and be comfortable. It's like because that's who he is. There's no fakery. He's not got a fake accent. He doesn't have to go to a black church and pretend like he's got a fake accent. He's not doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
He is who he is, and people respond to that because it's authentic. He manages to be a multimillionaire and still be like one of us, and we haven't seen that in a long time, a really long
No,
time.
we haven't. And Carla, thank you very much for your comment. She says your shows have been a breath of fresh air during the Biden era. Well done, thank you. And I'll tell you, it's sometimes it was tough. I gotta tell you, sometimes it was tough because, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it was. But today,
Well,
even
those.
yesterday, I felt the weight coming off because and
Mm,
today I'm ecstatic, just like everybody else that voted for Trump. And those of us that
absolutely.
have our eyes open, we realize so many people realize the weight of what this presidency means because this is saving our country.
But you know what though? We must not while we celebrate, and this is don't get me wrong, this is like awesome. We must never forget what these people just did. It's so easy for one generation to forget. And hey, and our generation did kind of forget. We took freedom for
Yeah.
granted. We took material wealth for granted. This country hasn't truly had a hard time really since the 30s and 40s when you get down to it.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible run. And these people took us to the brink. They gave us a look at what hell, at the beginnings of hell. That's what they did. And we need to not forget that and be vigilant moving forward that we go back to what do they say out in Louisiana? You got to dance with the one that brung you. And the one that brung us was a respect for God, a respect for family. Those are the things that brung us. And if we don't get back to that, we're going to be headed down the path to, I was going to say Gomorrah, but I'll just say California.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So Trump has also signed about energy, increasing energy production in Alaska, and he specifically asked the fellow, "Is this also reflecting Anwar?" And the guy says, "Yes." Uh, Unleashing American energy. Hooray! He's declaring
Right.
a national energy emergency.
Yeah. I mean, the last president depleted the national
Oh my
reserves.
word!
I mean, are you kidding me?
He started filling
I
them
mean,
up,
not,
buying oil so expensive, where Trump had filled them up I don't know if they were all full, but he got them
Hmm.
damn near there, on our energy, and it was in an inexpensive way. He's restoring common sense, restoring
Yeah.
biological truth, and combating gender ideology extremism. Thank goodness. Ending DEI. And that is like so big. It truly, truly is.
Oh,
These are the types of stuff that
yeah.
was um, ruining our country, taking us down the gutter, truly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this. I think it was John President Adams who said, the constitutional republic it was designed for a moral people, and it will not work without the moral people. And I think we just saw that the last administration was completely immoral, uh, could care less about principles, and we saw that where that was taking us. So to go back to morality, which is just another way of saying common sense, you know, nothing else matters. You do those things, and the other things fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the left tried to make the America First term a bad word, and it isn't. It's just like when you're on an airplane and there's an emergency, you lose pressure, you put your mask on first, and then you help someone
Hmm.
else. And if we don't take
Right.
care of our country, we can't help other countries. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean we're not against immigration, but get in line. To hear
Sure.
tonight, today, Cash Patel talk. He says, my parents got in line. They came from East
Hmm.
Africa, and he says
Right.
they got in line to get here and come here
Hmm.
lawfully, and that's all we're asking. And have it merit
Yeah.
based. I'm so for merit based everything. I want affirmative action gone in this country.
Oh yeah, and again, I'll go back to the LA example because it was rife with that. You look at the people who were heading those departments down there. The mayor, the fire department. It was completely
Yes.
DEI, 100%. And look at the result of that. Um, and do we want that to happen with our airline industry? For that matter, the person who's cooking your food at the restaurant. You want the person who's best capable of doing that job to do that job for you. Um, and otherwise, the whole thing collapses.
Okay, so here's a few more of the executive orders. Protections for Americans from foreign adversary controlled applications such as TikTok. We're going to see. He wants to make a deal on TikTok. He's thinking that the U.S. ought to own 50% of that. He said he says if the U.S. isn't involved, it isn't worth anything. But if we're involved, it's $1 trillion company. Maybe it's worth 500 billion to us. But I worry about the security part with China. And also, for example, X is not in China,
Mhm.
but
Right, right.
TikTok is definitely has and they can't sell TikTok unless Xi Jinping says you have my blessing to sell it to some other company, a country, because or a
Mhm.
person, or anything, because
Oh, for sure.
there is a
Yeah.
portion of it that
Ownership.
it is absolutely controlled by CCP.
Yeah, ownership by our adversaries is out of the
Yeah,
question. And I know, I mean, hey, I'm not 100% on this, but I do think these things need to be broken up, or at least kind of think about back to the old Ma Bell, back in the 70s. Those entities, smaller is better because if you have 100 small companies, then a handful of them can't destroy your entire country. You're relying on one or two. We saw what just happened to us,
yeah.
over the last 4 years. Overly reliant on a handful of these outfits, and they just destroy you. So we'll see how this plays out, but I do hope that there are more numbers of them, so we're not overly reliant on any one
Yeah.
of them.
So
Competition's
it is. So here's one: holding former government officials accountable for election interference and unlawful disclosure of sensitive information. That's huge.
that is huge. I mean, they ought not. That goes back to what I said earlier. We ought not forget, because these people need, the signal needs to be sent that if you violate the law and attempt to destroy the Constitution, then there's a penalty to be paid for that. And this is not like a vendetta to get revenge. This is just holding people accountable for
Yeah.
breaking the law. And I do hope they find a way to do it. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I do hope they find a way to make it happen.
Yes, and a Martin Luther King Jr. Day proclamation, and I think that was Holt making the flags to be at full staff. And
Mhm.
then let's see, protections for women against radical gender ideologies. There's going to be more. There's going to be more. He's just getting started. And
I'm so glad. I'm so glad he's hitting them with just open the floodgates. Don't slow roll this. I thought I heard him say that he had some staffers who were asking him to slow
yes,
roll this, and he said, "No, I'm going to let her rip." And I think you have to do
yes.
that.
And so the Senate has committee has advanced Christy Nome and also Russ Voigt to be confirmed, which is wonderful.
Mhm.
Let me see what other headlines I've got here. We have already mentioned about Senate Rubio. Rubio has now been confirmed. He's actually our Secretary of State. And Trump
Awesome.
has also said that they have got to preserve the political persecution records. And,
Mhm.
he talked at length today about the J6 committee destroying everything.
Yeah, yeah. And did he pardon? I thought Biden pardoned all of those people, meaning the people that were prosecuting the J6 defendants.
That I don't know. Maybe our audience does. They're pretty savvy. That part I don't know because when I was on Friday, just a couple days ago, somebody had said, "What about the 1,500 that Biden just pardoned?" And I go, "I don't know anything about that," and I still don't.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it is the first day, and it's awful, So it's that part is awful. But guess what? The Senate has passed the Laken Riley Act. It's the first bill approved by Congress, and the Senate has passed it. So that will be the very
Mhm.
first one. It passed with two amendments, which are not bad amendments whatsoever.
Mhm.
And I was reading this article in the Epic Times, and I'm I'm glad. So that'll be the first one to go
Mhm.
to President Trump's desk to sign.
That's awesome. That is awesome. He's going to wind up with writer's cramp tonight, you know.
Yes. Yeah, and you can't just stamp them. It has to be a hard
Yeah.
signature, a wet signature.
That is amazing,
His press
you know. And the
secretary,
next thing,
he
yeah.
he picked I can see her face. I can see her face, press secretary. Yes, he has. He
Okay.
has picked somebody, but I can't think. Oh gosh, and she's really good. She's going to be so hot in there because she
Mhm.
she just doesn't take anything, you know. So I don't
Yeah.
remember her name, but I know that she's a good pick.
Well, at least the next one won't be forced to stand there and figure out how to lie. I mean, I didn't think very much of the two press secretaries that Biden had. I just don't think very much of them. But in their defense, can you imagine having to be the press secretary for a candidate that's brain dead? Um, what can you
No, I
say?
can't. I could never lie like that, truthfully. Because
Yeah.
because that's what she had to do with a straight face, and then try to
Yeah.
convince you. Yes, Carolyn
So,
Levitt. That's it. That's who it is. That is
yeah.
who is his
So
press secretary.
it's
And they said
it's
they're
going
going
to
to
be.
remake the whole who gets access to him. So,
Well, I tell you what, that's going to be good.
it is.
Yeah, that's good. So you can actually, what it's been is just a pack of jackals. It'd be great to just go back. How about we just ask honest questions and not be attacking all the
Yeah.
time? Um,
Yeah.
I would love that. Um, would love it.
Yeah, me too. And it's now something that Kevin Hoare was actually contacted by Coin News today, or yesterday, I should say, and he was asked because he was going to go to the inauguration, but when they changed it from outdoor to indoor, then he didn't go. But he was contacted about, will Oregon be safe for being a sanctuary state? And his comment is that there will be a lot of disagreement about the role of sanctuary states are, whether or not we're going to see funding for things that are actually exacerbating some of the problems people in this last election across the country demanded be solved. So he's going
Mhm.
to remain optimistic. And he also says we're going to find common ground on a lot of things. And I've heard from some people here in Oregon saying that they want to do something about what's happening at the border, that it's just
Mhm.
unacceptable, that the fentanyl coming in is unacceptable. We are actually very optimistic that this will showcase an alternative approach, that maybe there's going to be more common ground than people are willing to admit. So it's going to be interesting to.
Well, yeah, I don't think that many Oregonians are going to be too happy about losing federal funding so it could be a sanctuary state. Oregon's redder than people think, and it moved more red in the last election. You take out two or three counties, and this is a red state. So,
You're right, and actually, the editorial in the Oregonian is the honey. This was yesterday. The honeymoon's already over for the new city leaders. They just got
mhm.
elected and sworn in, and they held their first city council meeting. And you know what they did? They took like $10 million, and we're going to increase our staff budgets. We're going to get higher staff. But guess what? Before their former mayor had warned the rising cost of the personnel costs and expenses outstripped the revenue, there was a 27. The previous projected general fund deficit was 27 million. Now it's forecast to be 67 million. The shortfall.
Leftists never learn.
And the city might end up
They,
needing to cover $100 million. This is why the people of Portland are going, what? We're over you people. But
yeah,
again,
yeah.
this is what the majority voted for.
And I tell you, I think that, and this goes more to the whole federal thing. People really begin to understand that when a state gets money from the federal government, they're taking it from the other 49. Why should the other 49 bail out Oregon, or especially in the case of California? Why should they bail out California? They shouldn't.
There's
And if they do, there should be some serious strings attached, um, so they won't have to do it over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a blessing of Southern LA burning, Southern California burning, because it is forcing people to have that conversation that, let's see, you're a blue state, your governor is who caused this problem, your mayor caused this problem, DEI caused it, and yet we're just going to cover and pay for this. No, no, no. So I think this is a blessing for blue states, um, that it's not, you just don't get to destroy your state and force 49 others to pay for it.
Yeah, it's a simple principle. It's like if you have a kid who's constantly drinking and crashing the car all the time, and you kick him out, and then he wants to come back. It's like, well, you could come back, but there's going to be some
Yeah,
rules.
yeah.
you
Because
know,
like for example, even here in Oregon, they were taking some monies, like let's call it ODOT money, and using it
Hmm.
for other things, using it for illegals. In fact, the governor said, we're going to take $10 million and use it to fund illegals. And in fact, we're going to fight the Trump administration. That's what she says.
Yeah. So
We're not going to cooperate. And the governor of Oregon has mandated training for state workers to not cooperate with Trump deportation plans. So when you have that
see, I tell you,
kind of a governor doing that, you can't have your hand out at the same time, right?
when those leaders start getting when they start getting personally held liable, let's see how long they hold to that position. Because I think that's exactly what the new I can't remember the department head, Homeland is it Homeland Security, Homeland.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
precisely what we do. We're going to charge you personally with federal crime, and I would love to see these people go to jail.
I want to see Kotek and matching bracelets. And the mayor of
Yeah,
Portland, any because there now this is the thing. We're going to have to see how this plays out in Oregon because Oregon was the very first sanctuary state in the nation. We're the oldest sanctuary
I
state,
didn't know
and
that. Mhm.
we're going to have to see how that plays out. But for me,
See, Sonny, this is the funny
on
part. Yeah,
immigration,
go ahead.
that's against federal law.
Yeah. So the very people who cry the loudest about Trump and insurrection are literally fomenting insurrection.
Yes.
They're fomenting not being a part of the federal system. They're fomenting essentially the state leaving the union. That's what they're
Yeah.
doing. When they do this, we're not going to follow federal law because we don't like it. So you get to pick and choose the laws we like and the laws we're going to follow. We're not going to follow. That's precisely why this place is in the toilet as it is.
Right.
Um, so that showdown may be coming, and we'll see what the result of that is.
Yeah, well, it is coming, and we're going to find out. Get your popcorn and watch the show because Tom Homan is not. This is the thing.
Mhm.
Trump invoked a law from 17. I want to say it was
Yeah,
1796
it's back almost at the fountain.
today.
Hmm.
And so he invoked this law that was used in order for illegals to be picked up and kicked out of our country. This is settled law. This has been used. It's been to the Supreme Court. I remember reading a little bit about it when it was first, he first had talked about using something like this.
Hmm.
And they're going, well, we're just going to fight it. Well, you know what? It's already settled.
Well,
There's nothing to fight.
we got
And it's the federal government's number one job is our border,
we got yeah.
securing our nation. That definitely goes against over states' rights. And Texas won.
Hmm.
Texas won at the Supreme Court that they could build the wall and take care of their state because the federal government wasn't.
Yeah.
I love it.
And we got three Western states that might have to relearn the lessons of 1860 or 1865, a new Reconstruction. I'm kind of all for it. If they need to be taken over,
Yeah.
and what it is, and we keep forgetting to say this, is very specific counties. Because you look at California, the vast majority of that's red. You look at Oregon, the vast majority. Same with Washington State. It's those two or three counties that have the population that are causing all these problems.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
guessing Umatilla County wouldn't have any problem with this stuff.
Well, this is the thing. All the counties are sanctuary counties in the state of Oregon, because our state law, the counties are following state law, and but frankly, I think the state law is illegal, and it's never been
Mhm.
challenged, and it's going to get challenged. This administration, I think, is going to challenge all of that. One other thing, a pair of Oregon people that live here in Oregon got busted in Southern California. They were impersonating firefighters. They even had a fire truck, an old fire truck.
Unbelievable.
And on the front of their fire truck, it said Palace. It said they had driven it into the Palisades fire evacuation zone,
Hmm.
and it said on the front of the truck, Roaring River Fire Department. It doesn't exist.
Wow.
So this guy, Dustin Nell, 31,
Mhm.
and Jennifer Nell, 44, were arrested after the LA County Sheriff deputies discovered them operating a fire truck purchased at an auction, claiming to represent a non existing fire department. And get this Dustin Nell is convicted, has been convicted before of arson. So let's see. Are they driving around undercover with a fire truck starting fires?
Well, California.
I don't know. I'm not convicting them that they are. I'm asking the question. I have what a great cover
Well, what's more interesting?
because
Yeah.
it's an old fire truck, and it looks, doesn't have any hose in the hose bed, doesn't have a ladder. It's the color and it's the size of the rig. Amazing that they've busted these two people, sadly from Oregon. Just another ding on the name of Oregon.
Well, the thing is when they do their research, is it going to turn out these people are otherwise politically connected? Is it that, or is it just your random people who just like to start fires? I remember when we lived in LA, there was a guy, and I can't remember which department it was. The fire chief was starting the fires. Do you remember that? Back in like the late 80s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he was getting away with it for years before they finally.
Yes.
So you have people who do that sort of thing. That's
Yes.
how they get their jollies, if you will. And what better place to do it than
Yes.
Southern
Yeah,
California?
absolutely. So I'm glad they've been busted. That's been shut down.
Yeah.
Sadly, they were from Oregon.
Hmm.
No
Yeah.
surprise, though,
Well,
I'll tell you.
we had all those
We do
fires.
have some nuts here.
No, when we had all those fires a number of years ago here in Southern Oregon, I have a number of friends who said they know for sure they
Yeah.
saw people out setting them. Um, so, in fact, one of my kids
Yeah,
had a friend
absolutely.
who was offered money to go do it. So there were people paying these people to go set these fires. No question about it.
Well, I thought that. In fact, the Black Lives Matter people, the
Mhm,
Antifa people, they're all one and the same.
mhm.
And this is part of the unsettling. And in fact, last night in Multnomah County, the county elections office in Multnomah County, 30, 31, 33 windows were all broken out
Wow.
last night. And so my girlfriend who texted me pictures or told me about the article, I just wrote back to her. I said, and so it begins.
Hmm.
Trump is in office, so it begins. And sadly, that's the case. And she says, yeah, you're right.
It's kind of amazing.
It's, I
Yeah.
mean, the elections office didn't have anything to do with Trump winning,
It's kind of
you
it's
know?
kind of amazing how quiet it is, though, if you think about it. Remember what these people were doing 4 years ago? Where are they? Um,
They're regrouping, Dawn.
well,
They're regrouping.
oh no.
They're not gone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like it reminds me of the Lord of the Rings story, right? When the guy lost the ring and it took him like a couple of eons to regroup.
Yeah.
Took Sauron
Yeah.
a while to come back. Yeah, that's what we got.
So, hey, we got a new guy, man.
It's
I'm
awesome.
gonna do
Exactly. It's like
some more Trump dance. I'm so excited. I'm so happy.
the men and
He
the men and the
lived.
women are safe. The cats and the dogs are safe.
Yes. Yes. We got to protect the children.
Yes.
We got to protect the children.
No, absolutely.
I mean, he hasn't done anything on education yet that I know of, but boy, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. Doge. Oh, I guess I read a headline somewhere today that like 4 lawsuits were filed, against the DOGE. Well, bring it on.
Yeah,
You know what? We're moving
that's not
on,
even
moving forward.
lawsuits aren't even news anymore. As many lawsuits they filed on Trump, that's like you got you've already tried to shoot me. A lawsuit's a nothing burger.
Yeah, well, I believe a lot of the billions that that Biden was sending to Ukraine filtered around to help fund these types of lawsuits.
Oh, I have.
Filtered around, come back, come to these NGOs and whatnot. So it's our own money that's paying this type of fighting this type of stuff on both ends, right? The lawsuit by the nuts and our government having to defend that. But
as bad as it is for us, it's literally killing Ukrainians. I mean, you got to feel horrible for them.
yes, and North Koreans,
right? Yeah, yeah.
And Russians,
right?
Yeah,
and North Koreans, they're thousands of miles. Think about how gruesome that is. You're thousands of miles away from your country, just cannon fodder in a war you know nothing about, and have no stake in it. It's just insane. But this is how dictators operate.
That is how dictators operate.
Wow.
So, hey, everybody, Kevin will be back tomorrow on Tuesday. And in fact, I had asked him, well, hey, since you didn't go, that's why we're doing this. He says, no, I'm going to be at a game. See you later. I said, okay, you get
Kevin taking a day off. Like, Kevin taking a break. Imagine that.
Sometimes we all got to do that.
Right.
It's okay. We got them covered. And hey, I'm telling you, this grin, the smile is so big.
It's so awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's so much great news. We don't even have to do any preparation. We just like show up and start talking. That's great.
That's exactly right. So I was going to say, hey, have a great weekend. But no, today's Monday. Tomorrow, wham, bam, back at work. And we'll see what Trump signs tomorrow, because today was only day one. And at the start of our program, there's the inaugural ball happening. And good for those people that are there having fun. It is an absolute time to celebrate in our nation.
Yes, it is. Hey, I used to think I would never see another Ronald Reagan. Here it is. I get two in one lifetime. That's pretty good. We're very fortunate.
Yeah. Prayers have been answered for our nation to take our nation in the correct trajectory, to save it. But we can't just sit on the sidelines. Right. We can't be the silent majority. We have to help, and it is at the local level to stay vigilant and help to, everything that we can.
What this is, right? It's the end of the beginning, is what it is. This just opened the doors for us to get out there and have an impact locally. Just like Sonny said, and we've got to get out there and get engaged. We got to be as passionate as those leftists are. We got to be willing, not willing to do the unprincipled things that they do, but we need to be out there as energetic or more energetic than they are. And it's easier for us because we're speaking truth, and truth will eventually win, but it's got to get out there to have a shot. And given the events of the last 6 months, it's a lot easier to speak the truth than it was 6 months ago. So let's take advantage of this window while we have it.
We've got to register voters.
That's absolutely true.
Get voter registration forms in your cars and register voters. Yeah. Ask people, hey, are you registered to vote? That's how we turn Oregon around. All right, you guys. Don, do you have any last words?
Other than let freedom ring, be energetic, be positive, don't be afraid to engage people in those discussions, and go get them.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Share the message.